You can tell a lot about a person by the way they approach a locked gate. Some knock, some wait, some respect the line in the dirt that says this far, no further. And then there are the people who walk right up and try to force a damn thing open, like it owes them money. That was my first impression of the Willow Creek HOA, a collection of self-important, clipboard-hugging suburban conquistadors who believed the world belonged to them as long as they printed the rules on linen paper. I had barely been on the ranch a week when they decided they owned my gate. The gate they were shoving at that moment. The gate they did not have the right to open. The gate that just so happened to be tied to a land deed worth more leverage than they could imagine. It still baffles me how they thought their HOA bylaws held more power than state property law. But that's the thing about power. It's not always about who has it, but who believes they do. The truth was simpler. The entire ranch, every fence post, pasture, and rusty water trough, was legally mine. Not leased, not shared, mine. And they had no clue. Not yet. The trouble began on a blistering Tuesday morning, the kind where heat carries a smell of dust and sun-baked cedar. I had parked my truck near the barn, unloading tools and feed, when I heard the unmistakable metallic rattle of someone trying to manhandle the front gate. At first, I assumed it was a delivery driver. Maybe they got confused and thought the latch stuck. Happens all the time in the country. But then came the grunting, and the complaining, and the unmistakable voice of a woman who'd spent her life talking at people, not to them. Push harder. You're not trying. I am trying. Another voice huffed. It's padlocked. Then break the padlock. I froze mid-step, a bag of feed slung over my shoulder. Break the padlock? What kind of lunatic tries to break into private property at 8 in the morning? I set the bag down, dusted off my hands, and headed toward the gate. Sure enough, 3 people in matching light blue polo shirts were clustered around my entrance like raccoons circling a trash can. The polos had the Willow Creek HOA logo embroidered above the chest pocket. Clipboards, sunglasses, the holy trinity of suburban authority. A tall guy with a patchy beard had one boot propped against the gate, his hands gripping the bars as he shoved repeatedly. A woman next to him, spray tan, stiff blonde hair, and sunglasses so large they looked like insect eyes, was directing him like a drill sergeant. Stop, I called out. They didn't. Hey! That got them to turn. The woman frowned at me as if I were interrupting her property. This gate is non-compliant. I stared at her. It's locked. On purpose. It shouldn't be, she replied, pulling a folded paper from a clipboard. According to Willow Creek HOA rules, front entries must remain accessible for community inspections and maintenance crews. I blinked. Community inspections? Lady, this is a ranch. Out in the county. You're not even in the right jurisdiction. HOA rules don't apply out here. The man with the beard huffed. Actually, they do. Willow Creek subdivision borders your property line, which means your gate is subject to our neighborhood uniformity standards. That was the most ridiculous sentence I'd heard all week. I walked up to them, extended a hand toward the gate. This gate is on my land. Every inch of it. You're trespassing. The woman raised her chin, unmoved. Your attitude is unnecessary. We're trying to help you. An open, unobstructed gate is safer. It maintains aesthetic cohesion for the neighborhood. Lady, I said, the nearest house is half a mile away. If your neighbors can see this gate, they've got better binoculars than the sheriff's department. That hit a nerve. Her lips tightened. She took one authoritative step forward, clipboard at the ready. According to the bylaws. According to state law, I interrupted, you're about 10 seconds from being reported for attempted forced entry. They all paused, but only for a moment. The patchy-beard guy gave the padlock another tug. That's when I decided to end this. I stepped between them and the gate, leaned down, and unlocked it myself. The padlock clicked open with a satisfying snap. Their expression shifted instantly, shock first, then smugness. The blonde woman smirked like she'd just won an argument she didn't understand. Good, she said. Now, we'll just take some measurements and schedule a replacement installation. I pushed the gate open only halfway, just enough to step through, then stopped with my hand on the metal bar. Let me ask you something, I said, lowering my voice. Do you know whose land you're standing on right now? She blinked. You said it was yours. Yes, I replied. But do you know how much of it is mine? The three of them exchanged confused looks. The blonde woman pressed her lips together impatiently. We don't need to know that. What we do need to know is why you think you can ignore the HOAs. The entire ranch, I said, letting the word sink in, is legally mine. A long silence followed. Something flickered across her face. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. She glanced back at the fence line, at the open land stretching beyond, at the rolling pasture that dipped behind the hill. It was obvious she'd never considered how big the property was, how big the mistake they were making might be. The man with the beard squinted at me. What do you mean, the entire ranch? I folded my arms. 160 acres, all surveyed, all in my name, which means your HOA has as much authority here as a lemonade stand in a hurricane. But the subdivision, the third person stammered, a short man with a thick binder clutched to his chest. The subdivision, I said, leaning against the gate, ends at the creek. And everything on this side of the creek? That's me. Every blade of grass, every fence post, every gate you just tried to force open. Their faces drained. So let me ask you this, I continued, letting the question hang heavy between us. If the entire ranch is legally mine, what exactly gave you the impression you had the right to break into it? Silence again. Longer this time. The kind of silence that happens when someone realizes they stepped into a hole they dug themselves. The blonde woman opened her mouth, no doubt to deliver another rule-book proclamation, but the words died when she saw my expression. She straightened her clipboard, cleared her throat, and gestured stiffly to the others. We will revisit this matter with the board. Good idea, I said, and next time, knock. They backed away from the gate with the awkwardness of people reversing out of a crime they hadn't meant to get caught doing. I swung the gate shut behind them and snapped the padlock into place. For a normal person, that would have been the end of it. But HOA boards aren't built from normal people. They are built from the kind who get a taste of authority and suddenly believe they are God's gift to regulations. I didn't know it yet, but this little confrontation was only the opening shot. The HOA wasn't done with me, and they had no idea what kind of person they had just picked a fight with. Because the ranch wasn't just mine, it was my inheritance, my history, and soon enough it would become the perfect stage for revenge. Most people think revenge is loud, slammed doors, shouted threats, dramatic confrontations. But real revenge, the kind that leaves a mark, that type is quiet at first. A seed planted where no one notices until roots have wrapped around everything. The HOA planted their seed the moment they tried to force my gate open. Now it was my turn to grow something of my own. 3 days passed without incident. 3 days of blessed quiet. The sound of cicadas in the cottonwoods, the low hum of cattle grazing somewhere near the creek, and the gentle squeak of the barn doors I worked through fixes left behind by my late grandfather. I'd inherited the ranch 6 months earlier, a sprawling 160 acres that had been in the family for 4 generations. What I hadn't inherited was the patience Grandpa had for the busybodies who'd slowly built the Willow Creek subdivision along the property's southern edge. But I had something else instead, a stubborn streak wide enough to hold up a barn, which is why the HOA chose the wrong person to mess with. On the 4th morning, trouble rolled back into my life, literally. A small parade of SUVs crept down the gravel shoulder beside my fence. They stopped just past the gate, tires crunching the dry earth. Out stepped the blonde woman again, this time dressed like she had a meeting with the governor, and 5 others wearing the HOA's official uniform, pastel polos and forced friendliness. Behind them, a contractor's truck idled with a trailer loaded with fencing material. I leaned against my porch railing, sipping coffee like it was the most entertaining thing I'd seen in weeks. The blonde woman marched toward the gate. I didn't move. She cleared her throat loudly. We're here for the compliance inspection. I set down my mug. Didn't ask for one. It's mandatory. No, it's not. She flipped open her clipboard with a dramatic flourish of a magician, revealing the final card in a trick. We reviewed your comments regarding property lines, but the board has determined that your gate violates Article 6, Section 12. Of your HOA rules. I finished. Not mine. Her jaw tightened. We have reason to believe that part of your fence and gate lie on community easement land. I raised a brow. Is that so? We've contracted a licensed surveying team to confirm this. Once they arrive, we'll determine whether your gate must be removed, relocated, or replaced to meet neighborhood standards. She said it with such confidence it almost impressed me. Almost. Surveyors. I asked. Real ones? License. Yes, she replied. Well, now I'm excited. Her smile froze, confused. Why? Because the last time my property was surveyed was 7 months ago, and the documentation is substantial. Watching your faces when you see it is going to make my whole month. 2 of the HOA board members exchanged uneasy glances. The blonde woman ignored them, waving a hand at the contractor truck. While we wait, they'll begin removing the non-compliant gate. That was my moment. I stepped off the porch and walked toward the fence with a calmness that felt like slipping into a well-worn jacket. Each of my steps was slow, deliberate, measured. The contractor guy hopped off his truck and grabbed a pair of bolt cutters. Don't, I said. The HOA signed off on this work order. I don't care if the Pope signed off on it. You cut that lock, and you're committing criminal mischief on private property. He hesitated, looked at the blonde woman. She nodded sharply. Go ahead, she ordered. He lifted the cutters. Before you do, I said, raising my voice, you should understand something. They all turned toward me. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I'm recording this. The blonde woman rolled her eyes. That's not going to do anything. Oh, it will, I said, especially since the sheriff's department is already on the way. She blinked. You called the sheriff? No, I said with a smile. They did. The blonde woman frowned. What are you talking about? I lifted my phone slightly. You triggered the motion sensors on the far pasture when you parked. Automated system alerts local authorities about unauthorized vehicles on private ranch land. Old system Grandpa installed 30 years ago. Works like a charm. As if on cue, a dust cloud appeared down the road. A county sheriff's truck rolled closer. The contractor immediately lowered the bolt cutters. But the blonde woman? She didn't know when to quit. This is ridiculous, she snapped. We have full authority to perform community modifications as needed. The sheriff will confirm that. She believed that. Absolutely believed it. This was going to be fun. Sheriff Donnelly stepped out of his truck, broad-shouldered, gray-bearded, and built like a retired bull rider who didn't know the meaning of the word rest. He adjusted his hat and gave me a nod. Morning. Morning, I replied. Then he turned to the HOA group. Everything all right here? The blonde woman stepped forward like she was accepting an award. Yes, Sheriff. We're performing a compliance inspection and correcting a violation. The resident is refusing access. Donnelly looked at me. I smirked. They are trying to cut into my gate. Your gate? He asked. Yep. He took a slow look at the fence, the land, the trucks, the clipboards, then back to the HOA group. You folks realize, he said, this entire area is private ranch land. The blonde woman opened her mouth, but he held up a hand. Not shared, not subdivided, not part of any HOA jurisdiction. Every inch of this place belongs to her. She sputtered. That can't be accurate. The easements. There are no easements, Donnelly said firmly. Already checked before I came out. County records show this property's been solid and unchanged longer than your HOA's been alive. The silence that followed was magnificent. I folded my arms. Anything else you'd like to inspect? The blonde woman's voice came out tight. We'll need clarification from our legal team. Do that, the sheriff said. Off property. But we have documentation. Off. Huh. Property. It took everything in me not to grin as they retreated toward their SUVs like scolded schoolchildren. But revenge wasn't finished. It wasn't even halfway. 2 weeks later, the real hammer dropped. The HOA had hired their own surveyors. They'd marched them onto the property line, certain they would find something, anything, to claim. They found something. All right, Just not what they hoped. They found that the HOA's decorative brick wall, flower bed, and a section of their fancy walking path had all been built a good 8 feet over the subdivision boundary, onto my land, onto my ranch, an illegal encroachment. And under state law, encroachments carry penalties, steep ones. Better yet, I had the legal right to demand removal at their expense. And I did, with pleasure. I sent the HOA an official certified letter demanding they demolish and remove all encroaching structures within 30 days or face legal action plus daily fines. The panic was immediate. Emails, phone calls, voicemails. They tried to negotiate, plead, bargain. But revenge, real revenge, isn't bargaining. It's justice with a long memory. So I refused every compromise. And when the deadline hit, I sent a second letter, enforcement beginning immediately. The next morning, demolition crews, hired by the HOA at full cost, tore down the wall they'd been so proud of. Jackhammers, excavators, dump trucks, all working under the furious, helpless supervision of the blonde woman and her clipboard. Neighbors watched from their driveways, whispering. Some recorded videos. One actually cheered. I stood at my gate, arms crossed, a quiet satisfaction settling deep in my chest. The blonde woman glared at me across the work site. You didn't have to do this, she hissed. Yes, I said calmly. I did. Why? I met her eyes. Because you thought you owned me, I said. You thought power came from a clipboard and a title. But power comes from knowing what's yours and defending it. She turned away, but not before I saw the humiliation burning in her expression. 3 days later, after the dust had settled and their wall lay in pieces in a dumpster, a final envelope arrived in my mailbox. A formal apology from the Willow Creek HOA, signed by every board member. Even her. I framed it, hung it right inside my front door. A reminder, not of the fight, but of the victory. The ranch was mine, legally, historically, completely, and now everyone knew it.